Hello everyone, I am Longridge, a practicing dark witcher, mage, sorcerer, shaman, call it what you will. It doesn't change the essence. Today, I want to discuss a rather important topic, which is light and darkness, the so-called forces that oppose each other and fight. The only problem is that the battle takes place in the minds of the light ones. In reality, no one is fighting with anyone. There are no magical battles on rooftops with swords, no astral karate happening. Most dark practitioners don't care about the light ones, so with few exceptions, like my channel, you won't find anyone online who openly declares their affiliation with dark magicians. And even more so, anyone who would talk about how things really are. It turned out that the prerogative to talk about how things are, what movements are happening in the world of occultism, mainly lies with the light ones, since they are somehow more socially developed. And I decided that this new format on the channel, which is a format of live communication, I want to create similar content as much as possible. These will be podcasts about magic, where I will tell how things really are. And I will speak from the position of a dark mage, since I am one myself. And it's easier for me to observe from the outside how often the light blatantly lie about us and tell some sick fantasies. It's hard to call it anything else. I've heard so much nonsense while preparing this podcast. It just doesn't fit in my head. Perhaps it is worth starting by explaining how the choice of side of power works and who the light ones are, who the dark ones are. And to simplify greatly, in general, there are two axioms or two immutable rules in occultism. These are the principle of similarity and the principle of sympathetic connection. And today, we'll mainly discuss the principle of similarity, as it helps us understand the topic. The principle states, as above, so below. The small reflects the large. The large reflects in the small endlessly. And this formed the basis of natural philosophy and numerous books on the properties of plants, herbs, crystals, etc. In theory, everything works quite simply, if simplified. For example, walnuts are good for the brain because they resemble the brain. Yes, it seems silly, but that's how it works, and that's how it was adopted as a basis. This way we can scale certain things and study them. I already wrote in one of my articles that in the modern world, Satan is more likely to appear to you with a golden Parker pen and in a Prada suit than in flashes of fire and with a pitchfork. Since the world has changed, the subtle plans have changed too. Everything has changed overall. It doesn't happen that we've reached civilization, while Zeus is still walking around Olympia in a toga. That's not how it works. It didn't work, and it won't work. Therefore, we can look at the world of witchcraft through the prism of globalization. For example, when we say light, it refers to a certain flow. Don't interpret it otherwise, because the flow, until you understand the term. These are specific types of egregors with certain spirits with whom magicians make contracts. At some point in time, when a novice practitioner performs rituals, conducts their magical or witchcraft operations, they hit the ceiling of personal power. That is, he cannot do a stronger job than he has already achieved. Each subsequent step becomes more difficult. In such a case, he has two choices. Either years of training with increasing energy, but this is extremely long and it's not certain that it will work at all, or making a deal with an egregor. Moreover, egregors can be completely different, which will be discussed further. There is the magic of order, there is the magic of chaos, as the chaosites also call themselves. And this is both a new trend and an older one. All those who work with infernal entities, all those who work with demons, with some of their variations of older gods. These can even be Egyptian gods and the like. It all belongs there. These are chaos magicians. There are dark magics. For example, I am a shadow practitioner and mainly work with the element of darkness and shadow. Yes, it's the same thing, although many have somehow started to separate them. In general, it's work with the internal state, not the external one. And it's quite specific. Most people choose what they understand, or more precisely, what has been imposed on them. After all, how do you know with whom to make a deal? Climb onto the internet, open forums, and there you will most likely come across the light ones who will mainly recruit you for various kinds of religious egregores, or for slightly more complex magical egregores. For example, the egregore of order, which is a light egregore because it's small. Inside, there are no light mages. That's just, well, utter nonsense. It's as absurd as if someone said there are burger mages or some kind of secondary product. There is fire. Fire is an element. Fire burns. It gives light. Light is a product of combustion. That's it. Light. There are no light mages. This is blatant heresy and an attempt to play on human stereotypes. That's all. I hope this is clear for now. Perhaps in future podcasts, I will cover this topic more broadly. So, through the prism of globalization, if we look at what's happening in the world of witchcraft games, we will understand that, having hit the ceiling of our capabilities, it is necessary to make a contract. And here, if we skip the stage. If we skip the internet stage, let's say we had a teacher who told us about all the possible options. We will make the right choice towards what suits us. Or we make a mistake and enter into something that doesn't quite suit us, but we had no other alternative. If by some miracle you manage to break through the stream of informational noise, which is mainly created by the light ones again, you will realize that choosing a side is not actually about morality. Morality is generally far from spirits. Most entities do not adhere to the same concepts that ordinary people do. That is, what we consider to be good, specifically at this current moment in time, since there have been different stages in history. And what was once the norm is now taboo. And that's normal. But for spirits, everything is different. Death for them, someone else's grief generally means nothing at all. Moreover, I'm not talking about some demons. I'm reasoning about quite bright spirits, about those who are considered spirits of good. But this is very far from the truth. Such light ones then tell you about triple retribution, about some kind of karmic nonsense, persuading and trying to instill that they are for all good against all bad, although in reality, it's not true. If we move away from profanation and this agitation for light, we will understand that morality has nothing to do with color. The color is determined solely by the source from which you draw energy for your work. In essence, again, let me remind you, if we take the principle of similarity and look at everything through the prism of globalization, we can compare the choice of an egregor to getting a job, where there is a clear salary, where there is an understandable list of obligations, and where there are certain corporate rules. That's all. Dark mages do not belong to some evil conglomerate where it's necessary to eat children and drink the blood of newborns. All this nonsense is purely propaganda from the light mages. Light mages are executors of someone else's morality. That is, they have strict laws, they have a strict hierarchy of subordination, they have a clear, majority-accepted concept, and you perform certain tasks for them and receive perks. It's more complicated with the dark ones. For example, I am a shadow mage. I'll let you in on a little secret. Shadow mages work with darkness. In fact, only shadow mages can truly be called dark mages. All the others are chaos magicians, order magicians, ancient cults, and the like. We lack any hierarchy of strict verticality. A dark mage or shadow mage can interact with many different types of entities and does not necessarily have to fulfill their conditions. For most of us, The only inviolable principle is the study of ourselves, our shadow side, the aspect. This is the source of strength. In general, color determines the source of strength from which we draw. Thus, the light ones mostly play on accepted stereotypes, or rather, impose patterns of thinking, where for us light is something good, and dark immediately becomes something bad. I'll remind you briefly that a child spends 9 months in the mother's womb in darkness. He doesn't become evil from this. And when he comes into the light, he isn't cleansed of darkness. It's such a fine line between psychology and witchcraft that I wouldn't touch it at all. You need to understand one simple thing. Darkness does not equal evil. Good does not equal order or light. Morality is generally inherent exclusively to us as a biological species, as humans. When you choose an egregor for yourself, you study its structure, what it gives, what it can offer you, and what you can offer it, which is also important. And by signing the contract, you gain access to a source of energy that you absorb, imbue yourself with, and use during the ritual. That's all. In fact, you remain a person with certain moral principles, and you stay that way even if you choose the dark side. But if you chose the light side, and you had your own certain moral code, you will have to abandon it. For example, relatively recently, a couple of months ago, a girl who had been subjected to violence reached out to our Center for Magical Assistance. I will not disclose the details, nor do I consider it important. I'll just say this. She went to the authorities and the law, as a result of which she was hinted that nothing good would come of it for her, and if she didn't back down, her loved one would suffer. She herself would suffer, and perhaps she should consider changing cities altogether. Then the girl decided to seek help from, well, let's say, a representative of the occult, and chose the light ones. She found a person, approached him, and he told her that it was a karmic lesson, that she should accept it, she should forgive them and let go. The girl went to the next enlightened one and received exactly the same answer. She went to the third one, and there she was told the same thing. Morally, and what does goodness consist of? The idea is that you must forgive everyone and everything when harm has been done to you, while those who have done harm will feel perfectly fine. These tales about evil always being punished are nonsense. They're rubbish. It won't happen. If a person is not part of the egregor of light, then the rules and laws of this egregor do not apply to them. There will be no karmic backlash, no threefold retribution. There will be nothing. A person will live as they have lived. If we look at history and those who were representatives of the criminal world in history, we will see that no one punished them. Nothing happened to them. Many people lived to old age, built a number of religious structures, and passed away peacefully. Nothing happened to them. Neither to them nor to their families. I mean in terms of some higher powers. The girl came to us, after which I referred her to one of my students, and he successfully helped her. Then I passed her on to the psychologist, and they are still working with her. This is a little story that shows the absurdity of the forces of light. So when you choose a certain side, you need to understand that you are choosing responsibility for yourself, as no one will tell you what to do, what not to do, how to do it, or how not to do it. You can work for the primary force, receive a certain payment for it, or you can choose not to work and not receive anything. You can interact in other ways. You can personally find a spirit that will give you energy in exchange for certain services. At the same time, you won't have to drink the blood of children or engage in any other indecency. But by entering the light, you will have to give up most of your rights and opportunities. You will have to accept their dogmas and strictly follow them, and you will be forced to strictly follow them. At the same time, calling you kind, well, that would take some effort. Since, as I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, Not everything that is light is good. Not everything that is dark is evil. Oh yes, a little story in confirmation. When I was preparing this podcast, I came across the channel of a certain light mage. And there he was talking about how he drove children out of a restaurant by sheer willpower. How he made lines park before him. Damn. Where does so much egocentrism come from in someone who works for the light? It would seem, no, he subjected a group of people to magical influence. There is a good chance he worsened these people's lives. No guarantees this family won't crash and die. No guarantees for anything. So the person simply shirked responsibility, discarded it, saying, I'm enlightened, I'm allowed. The higher powers permitted me. These are the kind of enlightened people who live next door to you and help others. So, summing up this little podcast, I want to say that regardless of the chosen power, the burden of morality remains on you. You shouldn't make choices based on some generally accepted and imposed stereotypes. If you want to be liked, that's your right. I'm not saying that the topic is exclusively about positive guys. With us, it's all kittens and cookies. No, whether you are kind or evil, whether you are a good citizen, primarily depends on yourself, not on the forces you work with. The imposition by the light ones of this baseless vilification, and not even vilification, but demonization of all the dark ones, I find it really unattractive. Thank you to everyone who listened to this little podcast about magic, and I hope you enjoy this format, as I plan to regularly host it on the channel as additional content between the videos of the Archive of Forgotten Stories and videos about practical witchcraft. Subscribe, like, and see you soon.